Hey English class. So before we get into today's video, I would like to mention that there's no real good way for me to record my face, so for now you'll have to deal with my woefully illustrated drawings. And one more thing before we get into the video, I would like to mention that I'm not soliciting how to build a weapon or anything like that, and also I'm not like an expert in any of these topics. I'm just applying what I know to the topic at hand. I just felt I had to mention not to try building this because God forbid some meathead gets an idea and gets flatlined by a boost converter having a bad day. Just felt I had to mention that for safety purposes. It's worth mentioning that the USA does have lasers of its own, but not the lasers that we're thinking of. Because the lasers that the USA have are massive ship-mounted cannons that blow up aircraft mid-flight. And while they are very, very cost-efficient and very deadly, they aren't much to look at. But here's the gun we're going to be working with. So this is the Raygun from Black Ops, if you don't know what this is. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how a visually similar Raygun would operate and how one of maximum efficiency would operate. In the world of photonics, there are four notable types of lasers. There are solid-state lasers, diode lasers, gas lasers, and chemical lasers. So let's start with solid-state lasers. In summary, what a lazy medium is a crystal that is covered with neodymium ions. And when a photon goes through this crystal, it will hit electrons as it passes through it. This causes the electrons to go into an excited state. Now let's say that photon that went through there earlier had the energy of 10,000 electron volts. And when those electrons come out of their excited state, which they inevitably will, they will release a photon of also 10,000 electron volts. A lazy medium is also really good at preventing destructive interference. To explain what destructive interference is as briefly as possible, it is basically when you have the tops of two wavelengths touching each other, so it cancels out. In other words, it makes the wavelengths weaker. And a solid-state lazy medium prevents that and also encourages constructive interference, which is basically the exact opposite. Example of destructive interference being on the right, constructive interference being on the left. In summary, here are the pros and cons of a solid-state laser. Pros has a very high gain rate and is very simple to use, as well as very efficient. Some cons being it is pulse-based and really expensive. The reason why it's pulse-based is because the electrons need a break after falling out of its excited state and producing a photon. Now, the reason why pulse lasers are so bad at melting anything is because it's only actually lasing less than half of the time. Now, let's talk about diode lasers. In my opinion, these things are actually pretty nifty. A diode has a filament inside that has a really funky atomic structure. I say funky because some of the electrons go to holding other parts of the structure together, which cause charge deficits in parts of the structure, which cause current, or the electrons, to go to automatically and bump into other electrons, creating photons. Alright, pros and cons. So, one of its biggest pros being it's really high efficiency. It's like 60% efficiency, which in the world of electronics is a lot. It's also very small and easy to put into a circuit. Ultimately, the thing that kills the diode is its tendency to overheat freakishly fast, limiting its output power to be relatively low. Next type of laser we're going to be talking about is a gas laser. More namely, we're going to be using a CO2 laser as an example. Now, gas lasers are actually really similar in function to solid-state lasers. With that aside, a CO2 laser works by using two gases. Its buffer gas being nitrogen and its main gas being carbon dioxide. So what happens on the inside, the buffer gas is hit by electrons. That buffer gas gains that energy, and with the nitrogen atoms running around the tube at nearly 10,000 miles per hour, and when these nitrogen atoms hit the CO2, energy is passed off as kinetic energy. One thing to know about CO2 is that it doesn't mess with this whole being fast thing. It's comfortable where it's at its own pace. So it turns all that kinetic energy into light. The energy of the light equaling the energy of the electrons in the beginning. Now let's talk about its pros and cons. Pros being it has a high-ish efficiency rate, as well as a high input tolerance. And the only con being it's difficult to use. For example, when trying to use it, you have to think about tube pressure, airflow, optical pumping, and gas percentages. And finally, we have chemical lasers. What happens in a chemical laser is chemical bonds are broken and light is created. It's as simple as that. Now let's look at its pros and cons. Its only real notable pro being its virtually infinite amount of potential, and its con being its ability to be infinitely expensive and large. And I know what you're saying right now. Why did you feel the need to talk about this? Well, let me explain. Well, I brought this up to do two things. Firstly, to give you some knowledge before I give you a multiple choice question. Secondly, to give you a multiple choice question. So here it is. Which of the previously forementioned types of lasers do you think that the Raygun would rely on? You have 4 seconds to decide. Time's up. If you picked a combination of a gas laser and a chemical laser, you'd be correct. So what you're looking at is the visually similar version of the ray gun. How it works is the chlorine gas reacts with the other gas, the yellow one in the picture, and it has a very energetic reaction, which creates energetic oxygen atoms, which hit iodine atoms and create photons. Then all those photons created go into the laser medium and then increase in number. Now, the math for this laser to find the actual output is very difficult, but I'm going to make an educated guess and put around 2.5 kilowatts. I say 2.5 kilowatts because it's a nice, even middle of the road, because it's not high end, but it's not a crappy laser either. It's like one step above the average chemical laser. Also, real quick about the laser medium, if it's on its cooldown, rays can still pass through it, so it doesn't rely on like a pulse-based mechanism. Anyways, continue. Now here's my prediction of what one would really look like. This is the handheld performance-based laser. It's about 1 meter long, which is around 43 inches, and would probably weigh around 10 pounds. And the visually similar Raygun Mark I is only around half of its size. If you take a look on the inside, the whole thing is ran by a 72-volt battery, which is connected to 12 6-volt to 40 kilovolt conversion modules. And yeah, I was surprised to find out that those things existed too. But anyways, there's 2 conversion modules for 1 gas tube. And what happens, one of the conversion modules has a resistor and the other one doesn't. The one with the resistor gets turned into ampage, and the one without the resistor just stays as voltage. And the wire that runs to the conversion module with the resistor just stays at the base of the tube. And for the conversion module without the resistor, that goes midway through the tube and connects to a copper ring. Since the copper ring is connected to voltage, that voltage pulls the current out of the wire at the beginning of the tube. And the voltage also gives the flowing electrons more energy. Now, from there, then the electrons hit the nitrogen hits the CO2, and then photons are created. But what happens to the electrons that aren't taken up by hitting nitrogen atoms? Well, those electrons go into the copper ring, and you see that red wire at the top of the laser? That wire runs all the way back into the beginning of the laser, and it goes into a 7th tube in the middle of all 6 of them. And this cycle just continues again, just in the middle one. And I predict that it would have an output of around 14 kilowatts. And it's as simple as that, if you're ignoring heat loss, of course. But overall, it would cost probably less than $950, has an output of 14 kilowatts, weighs 10 pounds, and is around 43 inches long. And to put 14 kilowatts into perspective, it is capable of melting a 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 inch cube of steel in 1.7 seconds. In other words, it is capable of vaporizing a 6-foot tall shield of zombie meat faster than you could say matchbox in German. Also, looking back into the video, I think the 6-volt and the 40 kilovolt modules wouldn't actually really work in this. So you'd better off just be using boost converters or Marx generators to get that much voltage. And I would explain why, but I'm too nonchalant and niche to talk about it, so I won't. Well, anyways, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. If there's any other weapon you want to see me take a crack at next, just let me know in the comments. I'll look in there, maybe. And also, please subscribe. I'm trying to surpass the degenerate scum in my English class that also have YouTube channels. So if you could do that, that'd help out so much. And thank you for watching to the end, and I hope you have a productive day today.